There are lots of tech founders that have no business running a company. They have a great idea. They were a good engineer. Maybe even you're good at product. That's 1/10 of what you're going to need to build a real company.
Welcome to SaaS That App, building B2B web applications, the podcast where we share real-world stories, practical advice, and tech insights for those building or thinking about starting a tech-enabled business. I'm your co-host, Aaron Marchbanks.
And I'm Justin Edwards. Each week we bring you the stories, strategies, and insights you need to build your SaaS or tech-enabled business smarter, not harder. Let's dive right in.
Hello and welcome to SaaS That App. With me, as always, is our friendly neighborhood CIO, Justin Edwards. Hey, Justin.
Hey, at least one data point that not all those who wander are lost.
And our guest today, Joe Kowalski, is the managing partner of SaaS Labs, where he brings 2 decades of SaaS experience to help new startups get off the ground, get some advice. After a successful exit from his company, ServiceMonster, Joe now focuses on guiding that next generation of SaaS founders through hands-on mentorship and investment. So he's known for his blend of tech expertise, entrepreneurial instincts. Joe's kind of been through it all, and he is here today to help share how we can all navigate the fast-changing world of web applications and AI and the ups and downs in the world of building SaaS. So Joe, welcome to the pod.
I appreciate being here. Thanks for the invite.
Absolutely. So, super easy one to kick us off because I'm always interested in people's life's journeys. But I was looking back at my notes. Am I recalling correctly that before you made the leap into software and SaaS, you were a biomedical polymer chemist in an R&D lab?
That is correct, yeah.
Tell me about that.
I didn't go to college. I kind of stumbled my way into a chemical company and earned my way into the lab over about 8 months, just learning organic chemistry, biochemistry. And the way that I approached data was very interesting to the lab. And so they brought me in. And and I got to work on several cool projects there before finding my love for computer programming.
It seems like a pretty unusual path to get into a job as a polymer chemist.
My life has been an unusual journey, right? My story opens at 23, grinding on aluminum parts for minimum wage with a new wife and new baby on the way and no college education. That's kind of how my story opens. And just through intellectual curiosity and fortitude and just this desire to learn, I worked my way through a number of interesting careers.
That is so cool. Well, kind of jumping off of that, and pardon the pun there, that attitude, that mindset that you have to just kind of jump in or just get started mindset, obviously has led you to where you are. But what does that mean exactly? And how does that translate into now your world of SaaS?
Yeah, well, so I fell in love with computer programming through a QA necessity. The lab, it took 3 days to get a test result. And so I love expediting, right? That's process is my love and joy. And so I helped them by learning to code, how to convert that process down to like a 6-hour deal instead of a 3-day deal. And just fell in love with programming. Joined a Fortune 500 company, slinging code for their production. For a while, got cancer. And I had always wanted to start a business. After I recovered from cancer, I kind of figured, what's the worst thing that can happen? I'd die, right? So that's when I made the big jump and started one of the very first SaaS companies in 2003. And, Salesforce was ahead of us by a number of years, right? But they targeted the enterprise and they were on, fiber optic, right? I mean, as far as I know, I was the first person to offer it to small businesses at $50 a month over dial-up.
Dial-up, man.
We can all hear the
days.
sound now.
Oh yeah. Those of us who have ever heard the sound, it stays with us forever.
In our nightmares, yeah.
What led you to target that segment of the market? Was it a conscious decision not to try to compete with Salesforce? Did you want to make something for people that you knew?
Yeah, so we didn't compete with Salesforce, right? They targeted enterprise sales organizations on, like I said, on the fiber optic cable or at least broadband, which was only like 30% of the nation at the time. No, I saw the bigger vision, right, of what really SaaS would become: low cost, monthly recurring, guaranteed income offered to people who couldn't afford big, huge enterprise solutions. And so we targeted the service industry, like carpet cleaners and pressure washers, right? I mean, people who average invoice was $250 a pop, right? So small businesses. At that time, only 25% of that industry was on a CRM of any kind. And I knew that it was cost prohibitive for them. They didn't know about servers, and certainly people couldn't access it while they were in the field. Now in 2003. But I knew that was coming, right? And so we built over 4 years all of the infrastructure that we take for granted now: recurring subscription charge engine, CRM, SEO, analytic engine, usage, like all of the stuff that we have to have to support the building of a product. We had to build that shit too, right? And so it took a long time to kind of get to a point where we were finally making some steam. That took about 4 years and a little pivot that really made the difference.
Yeah, people of my generation of programmers and SaaS founders take for granted all the amazing tools that we just at our fingertips, and we don't think about the fact that there wasn't a company
$500 a month.
Yeah.
Like, it's seriously, I set up my next SaaS, $500 a month. I have everything I need: CRM, email, accounting, like back-end usage statistics, data recovery. I mean, the whole nine. Now I can focus on the product.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And with ServiceMonster in specific, most people that I have found, the successful startups, are kind of birthed from people that are really steeped in personal experience with the industry or the area that they're wanting to provide the service for. For you, was it because you have a lot of experience or expertise in that service industry, or was it because you were wanting to bring what you were really good at to the service industry?
Yeah, so I was industry agnostic. So I made 2 huge mistakes. I want to make sure I communicate to the people listening here. The first one is I wasn't smart enough of a business person at the time to really thoughtfully select my vertical market. I got in because I knew what SaaS was going to be, right? It didn't even have a name at the time. Nobody was doing online business management, online typical, what we see today and take for granted. Nobody was doing that then. And at a family reunion, one of the elders kind of knew a lot about the carpet cleaning industry. And we just got to talking, and I was like, there it is. I could be incognito for a couple of years, figure out how to make this work, and then open up to all services, not understanding that the better play is always a straight vertical approach and really growing that base out. And I chose the wrong industry. My nearest competitor, Service Titan, you may know about them because they're like a $4 billion company now. They're pre-IPO, and they got started 5 years after I did. The difference? They selected HVAC first, and they didn't have a better product. I have a far superior product. We were far leaner. We ran better. We had the infrastructure. My customer's average invoice is $250. Their customer's average invoice, $7,500. And so they could charge $1,200 a month for what I was charging her for $45 a month.
All right. That's a huge deal, knowing kind of who your vertical is and who your market is and what your customers can afford to pay, and consequently kind of how much value you can capture.
In the total addressable market, there's only 25,000 carpet cleaners in the United States. When I sold in 2 years ago, I had like 40%, 35% of the market, of the addressable market when you really break it down, because only 35% of carpet cleaners were on a CRM. 20 years later, they were all online at that point, but it had only gone up 10 bips in flipping 20 years, right? And they couldn't afford anymore their invoices didn't really go up in that 20 years, right? Because it's a fairly inexpensive service, right? And it's low tech. It's easy to get into. And so lots of pressures to keep the costs low. And so, yeah, bad decision. I mean, I sold for 8 figures, so I'm not whining. But yeah, I am whining because it wasn't $4 billion, which I could have easily done if I had just been smart enough at the time to pick the right vertical.
So just to close the loop from my neurotic brain, you said you made 2 big mistakes. One of them was vertical selection. What was the other one?
The other one was pricing, right? So, and then several sub mistakes in the pricing category. The first is I didn't take advantage of first mover, right? I wanted to charge us just a little over cost, which was stupid considering I didn't get funded, right? I bootstrapped and I really neutered myself for growth. I could have used that additional capital as fuel to grow and invested the 12-to-1 CAC to live ratio that I was living at the end. I could have rewound that 5-6 years. The other thing I did was I grandfathered any price change we made, and we only made 3 in those 20 years. 2 of them, everyone was grandfathered who was already on the system. So when we did our 3rd price increase a year before I sold, we had customers that were still on our 2003 pricing. They saw a 300% increase in their monthly. Now, how much did I lose, right? I was terrified, always terrified to raise prices, always terrified to raise it too much, always terrified to lose clients. Nearest I can figure, because we had a really good churn of about 1.2% monthly at the end, even at the end. So, and this was the service industry, right? They have a yearly churn of 20%. So 20% go out of business every year. My 1.2% was nothing. These were mostly going out of business, and occasionally we'd lose one to a competitor.
Sorry, just to highlight that, thinking about your churn specific to your industry is super important because 12% churn-ish doesn't sound like that phenomenal a churn, but if you have an industry that's turning over at that rate, contextually, it could be fantastic. It's all industry specific.
We are industry gold standard, for sure. It was one of the things that made the 4 companies that were bidding for us at the end kind of get in a war, right? Because I knew they had a really good customer base. And we did $750 million of invoice throughput per year. So we were doing pretty good. We lost, as near as I can figure, 2% from that increase over the course of the next 12 months.
So 300% cost increase, 2% customers lost?
To some of them, right? Not to everybody. Right? A couple of them saw that, but yes.
And you were continuing to develop and grow the product and add features for this entire 20-year period, and you never raised your prices.
I'm an engineer. It never stops.
What an answer to that question.
To the chagrin of my 2 non-technical board members. When are you ever going to be done? The first time they ever said that, 12 months in, I was like, you got in the wrong business, dude. I'm going to rebuild this thing 4 times.
We tell people that when they're looking at biting off a software project is like software is not ever done. You know, you build a house that has to be maintained, and software's maintenance costs on carrying software are way higher than a house. So it never ends and never stops.
Yeah, and I don't think the new blood, right? We've got 2 new breeds coming into this industry. We've got the technical path, standard tech founders. But now we've got marketing founders that are actually able to spark together something of an MVP, right? With these no-code or low-code tools. And we know as engineers, it's not great yet. Certainly not. They can't build whole systems, right? I can have it build functions for me all day long, but they don't know that. These marketing guys are building these MVPs thinking that they're going to be able to create a product to sell like a widget. And I ain't going to go that way, boys.
Yeah, that's a lot of wisdom right there, and kind of the irrational exuberance of the AI kind of environment we're in today. There's a lot of exuberance that I would call irrational around AI and what it's going to be capable of in the next 5 to 10 years. So I love that point. I think that you're spot on.
Yeah, there's a lot that surrounds that for everybody that's involved in the play of that too. Because from the development perspective, obviously it's it can write code to a certain extent, but unless you know as an engineer what it is you're getting back, you don't know if it's good, bad, or ugly. And then on the other side of that, to your point with the marketing folks, you don't know what you're getting really at all. And it's like, well, look, it just spit out code and it's supposed to do this stuff. So cool. I ought to be able to scale that by hiring an engineer. And then they're going to look at this and go, did you gen this up with AI? So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different angles to that. So where would you say then, like right now, as it is, AI in the industry, Justin and I kind of are similar opinions on this, that the real value with AI right now is like pattern recognition, removing repetition and things like that, not replacing jobs. But what would you say is the opportunity for AI right now in these web applications or in these startups or in the minds of these founders?
Yeah, so I have an evolving attitude on this. With each version that, DeepSeek or OpenAI kick out. So the baseline where we're at today, if you're an architect with, deep technical knowledge, you've just turned a 10x engineer into a 100x engineer. Right? If you know what you're doing, you can read the functions. Like I can scaffolding an entire ServiceMonster replacement in a day. And I can have AI spit out my web API RESTful backend pretty easy because I know what I'm doing. I know how to ask it to build Legos and then put those Legos in place. If I don't have an architectural background and a coding background, there's an illusion that it can build a system for you. And then you're just in deep shit, not knowing what the hell is going on when things go wrong, trying to hand that over to real engineers. It's a mess. It's like a plate of spaghetti is how we used to talk about it in the old coding world. And engineers are always able to do more. But that's the opportunity. Because what's happening is a lot of out-of-work engineers now have a real ability to build a micro-SaaS. And what do I mean by micro-SaaS? I mean a 3 to 5 million ARR that's worth $15 to $20 million on the market easily. If you've got a 1.5% monthly churn or better, 70% COGS, and you've set it up on a lean staff. And I see those popping out like potato chips. There are so many small world problems where you can get 2,500 clients paying you $100 a month at 3 million ARR, and at a 5x, that's a $15 million exit. And I could do that all day long.
No, it's absolutely beautiful. Just to define some terms for anyone who doesn't have them, ARR is annual recurring revenue, COGS is cost of goods sold, and churn refers to the percentage of your customers you lose per unit time. In this case, he's talking about monthly, but we also talk about annual sometimes. Just to add some terms in for anyone who missed them.
Don't want to get too meta. I try to stay out of the weeds.
No, your angel wings just came out. I saw all these investment terms go flying by, and I was like, oh, we're moving into investment talk now, huh?
Oh, yeah. Actually, I've been looking at churn and customer lifetime value over customer acquisition costs before those terms existed. Because at month 6 after launch, I'm like, we're losing customers. Why are we losing customers? Because it really churn wasn't a thing. SaaS wasn't a thing, right? I just thought they were going to sign up and use it. And so we paid a lot of attention to onboarding and post-90 versus pre-90 user behavior and how to make them stick around, give them the dopamine in order to really make the product worthwhile. So yeah, that was way before I became an angel.
So for your, for ServiceMonster, did you have a way to get expansion revenue as well? Or was that one price for everybody no matter how big you got?
No, so we had 3 buckets. And I didn't do user pricing until a year before we sold. One model I did have, though, is we scaled per truck, right? The way that carpet cleaners make their money is they send a truck out. And so it didn't matter to me if they were a 1-man crew or 2-man crew, right? As far as my scaling opportunity. And so we did that for a while. But I tell you, I mentioned the pivot at year 4, which actually got us to profitability which was revenue expansion in a different way. Because I realized one of the things that made them stay was a good marketing engine within their CRM tool. And the number one tool for marketing for carpet cleaners to build repeat business, which was the bread and butter of this carpet cleaning industry, was very SaaS-like in that way, was reminders, mailing reminders. And so I was always saying, look, click these buttons and spread out your labels. And then one day it occurred to me, yeah, I have their freaking data. I could do the mailing for them. So I ran down to Best Buy and I bought these 2 inline printers, $100 a piece. And I bought these pre-printed cards from Office Depot. We put them on the network as cha-ching 1 and cha-ching 2, because every time the card come off, I'd go cha-ching, because we were making 60% margin on those cards. And suddenly, our monthly sales volume doubled. People were signing up because of this additional service, in addition to the additional revenue that it was bringing us. And so that was a big turning point for us.
That's amazing. Yeah, you got the captured audience right there already, or a new hook into
the data.
Into a new one. Yeah, and the data.
Right. They didn't have to do anything except go approve. And then I'd print the cards. We'd put them in an envelope. I had a team stuffing and stamping them of part-time college kids. And we made 1/3 of our revenue when I sold it through that mail program.
Incredible. That is so fantastic. Yeah, and you've answered like 6 other questions along the way here. It's fascinating to me, this arc that you've got going, and I really, really appreciate your depth of knowledge on all this stuff. It's great. So I want to shift gears just a hair into like the SaaS Lab side of things now. So, ServiceMonster, great. You got your exit. You decided retirement really was not your bag, and wanted to start helping other people not make the same mistakes you did, or at the very least do stuff better. So I want to talk a little bit about that. What got you so quickly turned around and turned off to retirement and into helping other people with these processes?
I used to say that vacation is what gave me anxiety. Right? I'm the happiest when I'm being productive, when I'm building something. And so after I sold, I got a couple pet projects I wanted to take care of. And certainly, as my voice indicates, I've had some health issues over the last 2 years, a couple cancers and heart failure. But that's a standard old story. I recovered from cancer in 2000, which was the inciting event for my business, as I said. But I just couldn't sit around and do nothing. And after 20 years of operational experience and know-how and, too much cash, it's an actual problem. Like, what do you do with this cash? I really felt like I could help others. Plus, I have a network of about 60 VC companies behind me that absolutely love what I've done in my history, who would love to pick up the torch when I get to a company to that $5 or $10 million point. So, yeah, I started talking to founders, talked to about 150 founders last year, and had a number of projects I was really interested in and helped along the way, and it's been fun.
Yeah, that's very cool. So I'm curious now, being on like the other side of things, where you are the investor. I've often wondered, because it seems like everybody has just a slightly different checklist in this regard, but what are the criteria that you look for when you are deciding about investing either money or time into a startup or an existing organization?
Obviously it's the jockey, not the horse, right? So a lot of VCs will go in looking at the founder and founding team, regardless of what they're doing, if they've got good, history. A good idea, like you said, some sort of coupling with that idea in their vertical versus their past, right? Their knowledge. For me personally, I want to see an MVP. Like, it doesn't necessarily have to be done, but you have to have some interest from the industry you're targeting. Those are the baselines for me, right? Now, I'm always willing to have the conversation. I would say half the founders I talked to didn't have an MVP. They just have an idea. They're sussing stuff out. But if I'm going to invest my time or write a check, then they've got to have shown it a little bit of grit, some fortitude. They've got to put something together and at least show a little bit of spark within the industry itself. Now, there's always exceptions, right? Like, for instance, I'm really looking at ATP right now for myself to build something new. And nobody in their right mind would throw money against that at the moment, because there's no good way to show traction other than just point to the 35 million users on Blue Sky. Other than that, you can't guarantee traction until you have something in the public eye. And even then, I think I'm playing a long game like I was back in 2003.
All right, so that's when you got to help me out with, Joe, because ATP is Association of Tennis Professionals to me. So help me out.
So ATP is a protocol that Blue Sky built. It's open source, and it's a decentralized data ownership. They focus on social media, right? And so you're decentralized, the creators, the content creators, when they're posting through Blue Sky, but they're really posting on the ATP network. And they're posting microblogs, right? That's how Blue Sky classifies themselves. But you can post anything, right? And so there's a new Skylight, a new VC-backed company building a TikTok replacement on the ATP protocol. That's backed by Mark Cuban, actually. So he threw some money at them. But anyone can build against this protocol, and it decentralizes ownership of your followers, your engagement on your content itself. Right, it's going to be much larger than that overall. I see it as an early Tim Berners-Lee and his team when they built HTTP and HTTPS and HTML. When they built those protocols, it was for document storage for college, right? And then business people got a hold of it and said, we can sell shit on this and prove we have the internet. So I know decentralized protocol is going to win eventually. My money right now is ATP's the only game in town. They're the one with the large user base. They've got large financial backing, and more companies are getting VC funding. And so I think it's a smart play to think, if you want to play in a decentralized network emerging in the future, ATP is a good call.
Awesome. Thanks for the lesson. Not a space that I've played in. So thank you. Super interesting. To do more research into that.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting. Well, you had talked about the long game there, and you've kind of had that viewpoint, obviously, since the turning point in your own life, but
sometimes too long. Yeah.
Sometimes too long. Yeah, but in a general sense too. And I'm sure that you had those conversations with founders and with startups. I mean, everybody in some way, shape, or form needs to have that long view. So how do you help coach those people on, keeping the long view in mind, but also being able to stay flexible and pivot when things don't go quite according to plan, or there is a shift in the market, or new technologies become available?
I mean, adaptation is a big key, right? It's, if you're going to be a founder, you've got to be willing to adapt. The hard part is either staying too long or not long enough. How do you make that call, right? I should have shut up shop on ServiceMonster in year 3. I should have closed shop. Like, we were clawing. I was making huge sacrifices on my family, my income, my time. By year 5 or 6 rolled around, I would have made way more money if I would have got my, what do they call it, my FANG jacket, right? If I'd have worked for Facebook or Google or Amazon, which would have been easy for me. But I stuck with it, and that paid off, but it took 20 years. So the first part of how do I help them is I help keep them grounded, right? This is emotional turmoil. And so when do you have a real threat versus a not real threat? When do you have a real obstacle versus one that's just in your head? When are you focused on what's going to move the needle versus what's fanciful for you at the time? As a founder, you've got to be willing to adapt and move quickly. You've got to be able to go in places nobody else has tread. But without someone helping you, it's 100% crapshoot. And if you don't have the knowledge of having already done it, then you're probably going to make a large number of mistakes. Like, I wish that I had somebody like myself with 20 years of SaaS operational experience to help guide me along the way. I would have cut 10 years off on my plan.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely seems like, at several points along the way, some of which you've already highlighted. I mean, you could have easily just gone left instead of right, or just stopped altogether. But yeah, that's amazing. So, translating that or continuing to translate that into these bits of information, these great nuggets of wisdom and everything. We're talking about this long game and this work. I'm going to call it work-life balance. Just being able to kind of keep your head in the game, but also keep your heart with your family, kind of a deal. But what is it that when you're talking to these founders and you are looking way down the road, what do you tell them to carry with them into the future? As it relates to, when do I get out? When do I stay? How do I know if it's too much? How do I know if it's not enough? Do I delegate and step back? When do you hit those pivot points along the way? How do you help people identify those?
There is a harsh truth. Is I don't try to help people that aren't ready to be helped. There are lots of tech founders that have no business running a company. Like, they have a great idea. They were a good engineer. Maybe even you're good at product. That's 1/10 of what you're going to need to build a real company. And so lesson one is, are you somebody who, I wouldn't say worth, that's the wrong word, right? But are you somebody who's actually can do this, or at least have the character depth that will put you in a position to make you the person that can do this? Because if you're not there, no amount of coaching is going to help, right? No amount of advice or even getting everything right isn't going to make everything work for you. So that's one. The second part is that character depth. Like, we all go in thinking that it's going to be this thing. It always takes way longer, always costs way more. It's always way harder. You spoke of work-life balance. I don't think of people who work for others, who talk about work-life balance, would think that I had it. Right? Now, I have 6 kids, an amazing wife. We homeschool. She has never had to work in our marriage. So I have some privileges there, like I would fully acknowledge. And I never missed a kid's birthday, right? That was important to me. But I worked lots of weekends. I worked through the night, lots of nights. I sacrificed extracurricular activities for my kids because I couldn't afford them, because I wasn't taking a big enough salary compared to what my salary was like when I was working for other people. Doing this is sacrifice. Sacrificing yourself, your time, your emotions. So you better have a great partner, a life partner if you're married, because this disrupts marriages way too often. And if you really want to win, a 40-hour work week ain't gonna cut it. You've got to be thinking about this when you're cutting the lawn, before you go to bed at night. When you wake up, you're grabbing on the phone, looking for engagement from potential leads. Like, it's a deep engagement and committed thing. Can you do it at a 40-hour? I consider that kind of a part-time founder effort. I don't know. I've never seen it. Realistically. Now, after you get to a certain point in your business, that changes, right? Once I had about 14 or 15 employees, I had enough layers, right? And enough people handling the things that go day to day, or watching the clock, or would wake up and if alarm went off, right? If your systems went down or something. But until you get there with like $1 million and $1.5 million in ARR, there's no work-life balance. You got to build it out. And you got to have the right temperament, right attitude. And it sucks. And it's hard. But that's just her reality.
Yeah, but at the end of the tunnel, there's potentially an 8-figure exit. So, you've got that to look forward to.
Well, it's not a train. It's not a light at the end of the tunnel. It's a freight train headed your way. You got to figure that out before you get off the track. Yeah.
So, I've got to ask, I have to wonder, worth it? Would you change anything looking back on that?
%. I wouldn't change anything.
Okay.
Now, here's the
Okay.
thing. I'm built that way, right? I'm built to do those nights and weekends and be sustained. I'm not draining energy when I'm working on a model. I'm giving energy, right? And so that's big. I'd like to think I didn't really make any mistakes with the family. My wife and I are still happily married. We're loving life at this stage in our life. And, my children seem to be happy and well adjusted, but that's a conscious effort, right? What I sacrificed was my leisure. I didn't sacrifice my family. I didn't sacrifice my work. I sacrificed the video games, the football games, the going out to, sports events, the golf, all that crap I didn't ever care about anyway. And so for me, it wasn't a hardship, right? I don't want to paint it that way. The one mistake I did make that I do regret is I got involved with the wrong people, my business partners. Like, I'll never do business with any of them again. And I don't want to talk too deep into that. But I will caution those, don't take the check just for the money. Make sure you're aligned on ideologies, on worldview, on direction, and make sure the people who are writing that check actually can provide some value aside from that check, right? Make sure that they've done what you seek to do, that they can advise you around those dark corners or dark times. And there's plenty of us out there that fit in that category, but there's lots more out there that don't. That'll be happy to write you a $50,000 or $100,000 check that you'll be stuck with for 20 years. That'll be nothing but a pain in your ass.
Yeah. So I kind of tease up into my next question, which is that you were bootstrapped, at least for like a long period of time. It sounds like you did eventually take on a business partner or take on some capital.
I would say we bootstrapped the entire way, right? So I had 5 partners, and that was including myself. So I had 4 partners. 2 of them were working members, right? They were there for the whole time, 40 hours a week. Good, bad, or indifferent. 2 other were non-working partners. 0 technical knowledge, 0 technical background, but they were friends and family. They really, really wanted in. And it was nice for us to have a little bit of cash at the time. And so that was it. That was the ownership of the company. That was the cap table. Same cap table when I sold 20 years later. And so that was the makeup. We never took VC funding. We never got loans. So we bootstrapped, we were self-funded, and that was the group.
Would you say this because VC funding wasn't something that you simply just didn't need? Or is it because it was something you were trying to avoid or didn't want?
I would say 3. We didn't think we needed it. So it was hard to go after it and give up the percentage. But we could have gone a lot faster. 2, I was trying to avoid it, right? Because I already knew what these pricks were doing. I didn't want new pricks. You know what I mean? That wasn't going to work for me. And I wasn't 100% sure what to do with the capital, right? My mistakes were early on. Wrong industry, wrong pricing. Like, you don't fix those just by throwing more capital at it necessarily, unless you want to just pivot the whole thing to a whole new industry. And I wasn't smart enough until it was too late, until it was 5-6 years down the road.
Okay, so contrasting your kind of experience with bootstrapping, having the same cap table from start to finish, with what you're doing now, where you are helping people both with resources and knowledge and from your wealth of experience, but also with money. I guess, how do you kind of marry those together, or what would the you from today who's doing those investment and that advising say to the you from back then who was going crazy?
Yeah, so if I could have wrote myself a check, as it were, the new old me versus the new me, as opposed to having those non-technical founders, oh my God, even if it was the same amount of capital, the difference would have been light years ahead of time, right? So number one, I would have got rid of the friction from anchor weight founders, not even founders, right? Investors, friends and family who didn't know anything about tech, who didn't know anything about what I was trying to do, didn't know anything about SaaS, didn't know anything about the service industry, didn't know anything about running a business, but yet had all the opinions in the world that caused me hundreds of hours of worry and anxiety and crash outs and fights, and versus myself, who would have been a lot more gentle, let the younger me actually run the damn company, but would have hedged the bet, would have shown the years of experience, the decades of experience in multiple facets, whether it's deployment or development or, marketing or teamwork or team building or hiring or building sales teams and support teams and infrastructure, like that would have been invaluable. So that's how I see it. I see, how can I find those rare nugget opportunities of a young myself and get in before they get the bastards that they don't want and help them accelerate that next stage. That's how I resolve the two. I'm trying to help the younger me.
So, Joe, what's next? What's next for you? What's next for, I know you spent a little time talking about like micro-SaaS and microservices and things like that. Where are we going?
Yeah, so I'm watching the micro-SaaS explosion, right? I mean, 150 founder meetings, and the only thing I did was post about 40 TikTok videos, right? And then, and so I'll do that again. I'm turning the lights back on to SaaS Labs here. I'm probably going to do a $200,000 fund. And I'm also looking at building. For the last 2 years, though, I've been focused on my health. And I've been renovating an old farmhouse that we finally moved into last month. So that took a year. So that was a major project. That's why I shut down my TikTok. It was just too much engagement, even though through the few videos I was doing. And like I said, I spent those last 2 years recovering from 2 new cancers I've been fighting. I'm currently in heart failure. I'm actually wearing a defibrillator in case my heart stops on me. It'll bring me back to life. But I've been feeling a lot better over the last month or two. And so I think that I'm on repair there. So house being done, health finally, I think, on the mend, which, side note, could be a benefit to young companies, right? They get the wealth of my knowledge if I engage with their company. And I might not be around all that long. So they might not have to do the payout.
There's a pitch right there.
That's a pitch.
What's your differentiator? Well,
That's right.
When we talk about longevity risk, that's usually not what we're considering.
Yeah, no, it's not. And obviously a little tongue in cheek there, but yes, I think that's where I'm at. My health is better. My personal projects are finally winding down. And I'm itching to both build and start talking to founders again.
yeah, the fire's definitely there, my friend. I can see it. I'm so glad to hear about the health stuff. Having turned a corner yet again in your life. You and I have a lot in common in our history as it relates to that, as we talked about on our briefing call. But yeah, I'm really glad that things are leveling out for you, and I'm very excited to see what you are going to do next with those things. I say your passion is there, and obviously the knowledge is. So you marry those two things up, That's terrific.
Yeah. And now I've got resources.
Kind
Yeah, that helps too.
of getting to the end of our time here. I definitely would like to have you back to go into a more specific topic in the future. You obviously got a vast amount of knowledge, and we really appreciate you taking the time to be on. This has just been great.
I appreciate that, Justin, Aaron. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Just really appreciate you taking time and sharing your time and your talents and your wisdom here. So we have been talking to Joe Kowalski, managing partner of SaaS Labs. Joe, where and how is best for people to reach you?
SaaSLabs.net. That has the link to all my socials. I hang out on TikTok more than any place else. I just love that place for as long as it's going to be around. Of course, I'm on LinkedIn as well.
Very good. As always, thank you to Justin, helping guide the convo there. And a very special thanks, as always, to our listeners. If you like what you're hearing, have ideas for the show, just want to tell us what's on your mind, throw a review our way. Hit that subscribe if you're inclined, and we will see you all next time on SaaS That App. Thanks for cruising along with us on SaaS That App. We hope you grabbed some insights that were inspiring, actionable, or at least entertaining.
If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review.
Until next time, keep building, keep growing, and keep those apps sassy.